There is a quiet paradox in human attraction. Sometimes we find ourselves drawn to those who seem just beyond our reach, to people whose hearts are closed, whose emotions are veiled, whose presence feels distant even when near. We are captivated not by warmth or availability, but by absence, by the spaces they leave unfilled. It is as if the very challenge, the mystery, awakens a desire to fill what is missing, to be the one who finally reaches them. But why does this pattern repeat? Why do intelligent, compassionate women often find themselves entangled with men who are emotionally unavailable? Perhaps it is not merely circumstance, but a deeper interplay of longing, projection, and the unconscious scripts written early in life. Understanding this dynamic is not about blame or judgment. It is about illumination, about seeing the hidden currents that guide our hearts so that we may navigate them with clarity, courage, and self-awareness. Emotional unavailability carries a certain magnetism, an allure that is often difficult to articulate, but impossible to ignore. At the heart of this attraction lies the element of mystery. When someone is emotionally distant, their thoughts, feelings, and intentions are veiled, creating a sense of unpredictability and intrigue. Humans are naturally drawn to the unknown. The mind craves completion, and when faced with gaps in understanding, it seeks to fill them. This psychological pull can make the emotionally unavailable figure appear more fascinating, more exciting, and more desirable than someone who is fully present and transparent. The very act of trying to decode their emotions, interpret their silence, or reach their inner world becomes a form of engagement, a challenge that stimulates curiosity, attention, and even obsession. The mystery acts as a subtle amplifier of desire, transforming absence into a compelling force. The appeal of mystery is further intensified by contrast. A person who is open, expressive, and emotionally accessible presents clarity and predictability. While these qualities are undeniably healthy and stabilizing, they can sometimes feel ordinary, lacking the spark of challenge. Emotional unavailability, in contrast, produces tension and anticipation. Every interaction, every word, every glance is laden with uncertainty. This uncertainty triggers the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine in response to intermittent reinforcement. The occasional warmth or attention is magnified because it is inconsistent. In other words, the very scarcity of emotional availability enhances its perceived value. The emotionally distant individual becomes an enigma, a puzzle whose solution promises satisfaction but never guarantees it, creating a potent mix of longing and fascination. Mystery also allows for projection, though this overlaps with another dynamic. When someone is unavailable, the mind fills the gaps with imagination, hope, and desire. Every silence, every hesitation, every boundary becomes a canvas onto which one projects idealized qualities, sensitivity, depth, hidden passion, or future intimacy. The unknown allows the observer to shape the person into the version they want to see, creating a narrative that may have little to do with reality. This projection amplifies the allure because it is fueled by personal longing rather than factual interaction. The emotionally unavailable person becomes simultaneously intriguing and unattainable, a figure that exists as much in the imagination as in reality. The mystery is not simply in them, it is in the way our minds respond to absence, scarcity, and ambiguity. The nature of mystery in emotional unavailability is also tied to the human attraction to challenge. A person who is fully open and available does not require effort to connect. Their emotional landscape is accessible. The emotionally unavailable person, by contrast, introduces a subtle challenge. Each step toward connection is uncertain. Each attempt at intimacy met with hesitation or restraint. This challenge triggers engagement and investment. The pursuit itself becomes rewarding, independent of the outcome. The mind equates effort with value, and when emotional responsiveness is rare or inconsistent, it can feel more precious. Mystery, therefore, is not just about the unknown. It is about the dance between approach and retreat, the interplay between desire and elusiveness that activates attention, persistence, and fascination. This allure is often unconscious, operating beneath awareness. Women drawn to emotionally unavailable men may not articulate that the mystery is what fascinates them. They may instead interpret the attraction as chemistry, intensity, or passion. Yet what underlies this perception is the way emotional distance triggers curiosity, investment, and psychological reward. The enigmatic presence becomes magnetic precisely because it resists full comprehension or control. The unknown space created by unavailability stimulates the imagination, activates the reward system, and fosters a sense of pursuit, which can be mistaken for genuine intimacy or connection. However, the magnetic pull of mystery has a dual edge. While it draws attention and fuels desire, it also obscures reality. The very qualities that make someone alluring, their inconsistency, emotional distance, or lack of availability, can create frustration, longing, and emotional turbulence. The pursuit of the unknown can become an endless cycle where fascination is intertwined with disappointment and the reward of closeness is never fully realized. Mystery is intoxicating, but it is a double-edged force. It captivates, but it can also disorient. Recognizing the role of mystery in attraction is essential, not to diminish desire, but to illuminate the psychological dynamics at play. It explains why emotional unavailability is so compelling, why it can feel irresistible, and why the pursuit of what is hidden becomes a central element of attraction. In essence, the allure of emotional unavailability is built on the human fascination with the unknown. Mystery amplifies desire, triggers engagement, and creates the perception of depth and significance. It transforms absence in attraction and uncertainty into intrigue. It is a subtle, powerful force that captivates the imagination and the heart, drawing attention and investment precisely because it resists predictability and clarity. Understanding this dynamic provides insight into why emotionally unavailable individuals are so magnetic and why their distance can feel simultaneously frustrating, tantalizing, and irresistible. Patterns of familiarity often play a powerful, largely unconscious role in why women are drawn to emotionally unavailable men. From early childhood, people develop templates for relationships based on the interactions, behaviors, and emotional climates they experience within their families and formative environments. These templates, often shaped by attachment styles, create a lens through which one interprets love, intimacy, and emotional connection. For women who grew up in environments where emotional availability was inconsistent, distant, or conditional, the experience of unavailability can feel familiar, even comforting, because it aligns with a long-standing internal narrative about relationships. It may not be consciously sought, but it resonates on a deep psychological level. In essence, the emotionally unavailable partner mirrors the emotional patterns that have already been encoded in the psyche, offering both a sense of predictability and a replay of unresolved dynamics from the past. Attachment theory helps illuminate this pattern. Women who develop anxious or ambivalent attachment styles often learned, consciously or unconsciously, that love is intermittent, earned, or fragile. They may have experienced caregivers who were loving at times but distant or emotionally inaccessible at others. As a result, the unpredictability of emotional responsiveness becomes normalized, and the cycle of pursuit and withdrawal feels familiar and even meaningful. When an emotionally unavailable man enters the picture, the dynamic often replicates the same push and pull experienced in early life. This repetition can be compelling because it provides a sense of continuity with one's own history, reinforcing the subconscious belief that love and validation are conditional and must be earned through persistence, patience, or sacrifice. The pattern may feel almost instinctual, a gravitational pull toward what is known, even if it is painful or unfulfilling. Patterns of familiarity also intersect with personal history and past relationships. Many women who repeatedly find themselves attracted to emotionally unavailable men may have experienced previous partners who exhibited similar traits. Each relationship reinforces an internalized expectation of what intimacy looks like, even if that expectation involves distance, inconsistency, or emotional restraint. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. Familiarity breeds attraction, and attraction reinforces familiarity. The mind tends to seek patterns it recognizes, and emotional unavailability, paradoxically, becomes a source of comfort because it fits into an established narrative about love and connection. This familiarity can override more rational considerations, such as compatibility, emotional health, or long-term fulfillment, because it resonates with deeply embedded expectations. Another aspect of familiarity is the interplay of unresolved needs and internalized beliefs about worthiness. Women who grew up in environments where emotional needs were overlooked or inconsistently met may unconsciously gravitate toward partners who replicate this dynamic. The emotional unavailability of the partner becomes a canvas upon which one projects a hope for eventual recognition, care, or affirmation, mirroring early desires for validation that were unmet. In this way, the attraction is not solely about the man himself, but about an internalized narrative that seeks resolution, reassurance, or healing through repetition. The emotional pattern is familiar because it echoes unresolved childhood experiences, offering an opportunity, however subconscious, to confront or master them. It is also important to recognize that patterns of familiarity are reinforced by culture and societal narratives. Stories of the chase or the allure of the elusive partner reinforce the idea that emotional unavailability is not only attractive but rewarding if conquered. This external validation interacts with internalized patterns from childhood, creating a potent combination. The emotionally unavailable man is both familiar and socially framed as desirable. The familiarity of the dynamic gives a sense of coherence, even when the experience is frustrating, painful, or inconsistent with conscious goals for intimacy. Women may find themselves drawn into these dynamics repeatedly, not out of logic, but because the patterns feel psychologically recognizable and subjectively meaningful. Patterns of familiarity also intersect with identity and self-concept. Women who have internalized the belief that their worth is contingent upon effort, persistence, or sacrifice may find themselves attracted to emotionally unavailable men precisely because these men reinforce the internal script. The dynamic confirms, albeit unconsciously, that love requires striving, persistence, and negotiation. Emotional unavailability feels familiar not because it is inherently desirable, but because it aligns with pre-existing expectations and internalized beliefs about relationships, worth, and validation. The pull toward what is familiar, even if it is painful or incomplete, is powerful because it bypasses rational decision making and appeals directly to the subconscious mind. Ultimately, patterns of familiarity create a gravitational pull toward emotional unavailability. The attraction is often less about the person and more about the internalized scripts, expectations, and unresolved dynamics that the individual carries from early life and past experiences. Emotional unavailability resonates because it feels known, predictable, and psychologically coherent, even when it produces longing, frustration, or heartbreak. By understanding the role of familiarity, it becomes possible to recognize why these dynamics repeat and how one might begin to break the cycle, shifting attention away from patterns that are familiar but unfulfilling toward connections that are emotionally available, reciprocal, and nourishing. Projection of desire is a powerful, often unconscious force that plays a central role in why women are drawn to emotionally unavailable men. It operates quietly, shaping perceptions, emotions, and expectations without overt awareness. At its core, projection occurs when we attribute qualities, intentions, or emotions onto another person that may not actually exist, often reflecting our own hopes, fears, or unfulfilled desires. When a woman encounters a man who is emotionally distant, the lack of clarity and transparency creates a canvas onto which she can project her imagination. Every ambiguous word, every withheld emotion, every moment of attention or lack thereof becomes a space to insert idealized traits, fantasies, or the very qualities she longs for but has not yet fully experienced. In essence, the emotionally unavailable man becomes a mirror for her own inner desires, a figure onto which she can project what she wishes to see rather than what is truly present. This projection is often fueled by the tension between presence and absence. Emotional unavailability creates a push and pull dynamic that is inherently evocative. When moments of warmth, attention, or connection appear amid the distance, they are amplified by contrast and imbued with greater significance than they objectively hold. The mind, driven by hope and longing, fills in the gaps, imagining deeper feelings, hidden vulnerabilities, or untapped potential. Every subtle gesture is interpreted as a clue, every silence as a test, and every fleeting moment of closeness as proof of latent intimacy. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a narrative waiting to be completed, and the woman, often unconsciously, takes on the role of co-author, projecting her desires to fill in the blanks. Projection of desire is also reinforced by an internalized sense of purpose and agency. There is a compelling psychological narrative that if the emotionally unavailable man could only recognize her value, or if she could reach him fully, the relationship could blossom into the ideal connection she imagines. This imagined potential creates a sense of challenge and mission. The projection transforms uncertainty into possibility and absence into promise. It is not merely about attraction to the person's qualities. It is about investing in the narrative of what could be, a story that exists largely in the mind of the projector. The emotionally unavailable man becomes less an individual and more a symbol of the fulfillment, validation, and intimacy she seeks. The role of projection is intensified by the emotional intensity inherent in pursuit. When someone is distant, the occasional moments of connection feel disproportionately meaningful. The mind exaggerates the significance of these interactions, assigning them emotional weight that may exceed their objective reality. In this way, projection and desire feed off one another. The woman projects qualities onto the man. The intermittent attention reinforces the imagined depth, and the emotional pull grows stronger. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a repository for hope, longing, and fantasy, an idealized figure that bears little resemblance to the actual person. Yet this idealization is compelling because it allows the woman to experience the feelings she desires, being seen, cherished, and needed, even if the man himself cannot consistently provide them. Projection of desire is also influenced by unmet needs and unfulfilled emotional experiences from the past. When a woman has experienced emotional inconsistency, neglect, or unavailability in early relationships, either with family, friends, or past partners, the mind unconsciously seeks to resolve or recreate those dynamics. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a canvas for this unresolved longing. Her projections are shaped by an inner hope that this time, with this person, the gaps will be filled, the distance will be bridged, and the love will finally match her imagined ideal. The attraction to unavailability is less about the present reality and more about the potential for fulfillment that she has learned to seek through projection. Projection of desire also shapes behavior in subtle but significant ways. When a woman projects her ideal onto an emotionally unavailable man, she may interpret ambiguous actions as signs of intimacy, persistence, or commitment. She may forgive inconsistency as excuse absences or rationalize emotional distance, believing in the narrative she has constructed rather than the facts at hand. The relationship becomes a stage for her imagination, a space where hope and longing create emotional momentum. Her energy is invested not in what is, but in what she believes could be, which perpetuates attraction and deepens involvement despite inconsistency, distance, or lack of reciprocity. Ultimately, projection of desire illuminates why emotionally unavailable men hold such compelling sway. They become mirrors for fantasies, repositories for hope, and vessels for idealized qualities. The attraction is not solely about their behavior or traits, but about the emotional and psychological dynamics they activate. The projection allows women to engage with the possibility of connection, love, and fulfillment that exists largely in the imagination. Recognizing this mechanism is crucial for understanding patterns of attraction, as it reveals that the allure often lies not in the other person's reality, but in the desires, hopes, and emotional scripts projected onto them. It explains why emotionally unavailable men can feel magnetic, why pursuit feels compelling, and why the heart is drawn to what is absent rather than present. The challenge presented by emotionally unavailable men is a force that can be both intoxicating and compelling. There is a deep-seated psychological mechanism at work when a woman encounters someone who is distant, elusive, or restrained in emotional expression. The very difficulty of connection transforms attraction into a game, a pursuit that triggers engagement, excitement, and investment. Human psychology often interprets scarcity as value. The harder something is to attain, the more it is sought after. When a man's emotions are guarded, his attention intermittent, or his intimacy limited, the challenge becomes a catalyst for desire. The pursuit itself can become a source of meaning, a way to validate one's worth, and an arena in which hope, determination, and longing converge. Emotional unavailability, by creating distance and unpredictability, invites engagement on a level that is cerebral, emotional, and almost strategic. The challenge of the emotionally unavailable man engages the mind in unique ways. Unlike relationships in which emotional access is straightforward, interactions with someone who is distant require interpretation, discernment, and patience. Every word, glance, or gesture becomes weighted with significance. The mind begins to analyze, anticipate, and strategize. What does he mean by that comment? Why did he act this way? Was this a sign of interest or disinterest? This mental engagement stimulates attention and focus, creating a heightened sense of awareness and involvement. The challenge becomes intrinsically rewarding because it requires effort, persistence, and subtle skill. The pursuit is both intellectually stimulating and emotionally charged, activating the desire to decode, reach, and understand. In this way, the difficulty itself becomes a source of allure. The dynamic of challenge is amplified by the intermittent reinforcement inherent in emotionally unavailable men. Occasional moments of warmth, attention, or closeness are magnified precisely because they are rare. The brain is wired to respond to unpredictable rewards with heightened anticipation and desire, releasing dopamine in response to small signals of connection. This pattern mirrors the psychological principles observed in games of chance. The uncertainty and variability of reward make engagement more compelling than consistent availability would. The challenge is not simply the difficulty of winning affection, it is the emotional high created by the unpredictability itself. The pursuit becomes a cycle of hope, longing, and reinforcement, which intensifies the connection even in the absence of consistent emotional reciprocity. The pursuit of the emotionally unavailable man often carries symbolic significance. The challenge can be interpreted as a test of worth, skill, or desirability. A woman may unconsciously believe that her persistence, sensitivity, or cleverness will eventually unlock his emotions, revealing depth, vulnerability, or commitment. This perception transforms the dynamic into a kind of quest, where effort and investment are seen as meaningful and potentially transformative. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a puzzle, a prize, or a barrier to be overcome, and the pursuit becomes a stage upon which personal qualities, resilience, intelligence, empathy, patience can be expressed and tested. The challenge, in this sense, validates the self, creating a psychological narrative of significance and purpose. The game, like quality of this dynamic, is further reinforced by social and cultural narratives. Stories of love as conquest, of winning over the elusive partner, and of the thrill of pursuit normalize the idea that emotional unavailability is desirable. These narratives suggest that the difficulty of connection is part of the appeal, framing pursuit as a meaningful endeavor rather than a source of frustration. The interplay between cultural messaging and personal psychology amplifies the attraction to challenge, making emotional unavailability feel compelling not only because of internal drives, but also because it is socially reinforced as an exciting and worthwhile pursuit. The challenge is also deeply tied to identity and self-concept. Women who are drawn to emotionally unavailable men may, consciously or unconsciously, see the pursuit as a reflection of their own worth, skill, or desirability. Success, even in small measures of acknowledgement or attention, confirms competence, attractiveness, and value. Each small breakthrough feels like validation, reinforcing the effort to engage. Conversely, resistance or withdrawal from the man can trigger deeper motivation to persist, activating a psychological pattern in which scarcity and difficulty are equated with value and meaning. The challenge becomes intertwined with self-esteem, creating a cycle of pursuit that is both compelling and consuming. Yet the pursuit is not solely about external validation. It also offers emotional intensity. The oscillation between connection and distance heightens feelings of longing, anticipation, and emotional arousal. Emotional highs are intensified by preceding lows, and the pursuit itself becomes a source of meaning, excitement, and engagement. This intensity can be addictive, creating a cycle in which the chase is both the reward and the purpose. The emotionally unavailable man, by withholding consistent access, transforms the ordinary rhythms of interaction into a heightened, almost cinematic emotional experience. Ultimately, the challenge posed by emotionally unavailable men operates on multiple levels: psychological, emotional, and symbolic. It engages the mind through interpretation and strategy, stimulates the brain through intermittent reinforcement, validates the self through perceived achievement, and provides emotional intensity through contrast and scarcity. The difficulty of connection itself becomes an alluring force, creating fascination, engagement, and investment. It is a dynamic in which the pursuit is inseparable from desire, and in which the challenge of reaching the emotionally unavailable man becomes both the pathway and the reward, drawing women into cycles of attraction that are as compelling as they are complex. The connection between self-worth validation and the attraction to emotionally unavailable men runs deep, often operating beneath conscious awareness. Many women, consciously strong and independent in other areas of life, find themselves drawn to men who are emotionally distant because these dynamics touch something fundamental about their sense of value and identity. When attention, affection, or emotional intimacy is intermittent, it creates a subtle but powerful system of reinforcement in which approval feels earned rather than given freely. This pattern taps into the deeply human desire to feel worthy, seen, and accepted, turning emotional unavailability into a mirror of one's own internalized need for validation. The emotionally distant man, by withholding or selectively offering attention, creates a feedback loop in which his acknowledgement is disproportionately weighted, and the pursuit of it feels meaningful, significant, and urgent. At the core of this dynamic is the human tendency to link self-worth with external validation. For some women, especially those who grew up in environments where affection or acknowledgement was conditional, love and approval are perceived as achievements rather than constants. The emotionally unavailable man, intentionally or not, mirrors this early experience. His emotional distance or inconsistency signals that approval is not guaranteed, that it must be earned through attentiveness, effort, or perseverance. This dynamic can feel familiar, even comforting, because it aligns with internalized narratives about value, that worth must be proven, that love must be worked for, and that recognition is a scarce and precious commodity. Consequently, attention from the emotionally unavailable man carries an amplified emotional significance, functioning almost like a reward in a psychological system conditioned by prior experience. The pursuit of validation from someone emotionally distant often intersects with identity and self-concept. A woman may feel that if she can break through the emotional walls, she will prove not only his capacity for intimacy, but also her own value, attractiveness, and skill in love. This perception creates a sense of purpose and agency, reinforcing the effort to engage. The emotionally unavailable man, by withholding consistent emotional access, becomes both a challenge and a barometer of self-worth. Every small sign of attention or acknowledgement is magnified, every withdrawal or absence interpreted as a personal test, and every rare moment of emotional connection becomes proof of significance. The emotional stakes are high, and the dynamic can be intoxicating because it intertwines desire with a sense of achievement and validation. Validation seeking is also fueled by intermittent reinforcement, a psychological principle in which rewards that occur inconsistently or unpredictably are more compelling than those given consistently. When the emotionally unavailable man offers occasional attention, warmth, or vulnerability, the scarcity makes these moments disproportionately valuable. The mind becomes highly attuned to these signals, anticipating, analyzing, and investing energy in ways that are both conscious and unconscious. The pursuit is not only about the person, but about the experience of earning and receiving approval itself. The emotional highs of recognition are intensified by preceding lows, creating a cycle that reinforces attachment and engagement, even when the overall experience is inconsistent or frustrating. This dynamic can also interact with deeper fears and insecurities. Seeking validation from someone emotionally unavailable may reflect an unconscious concern that one's value is contingent on external acknowledgement. In such cases, the attraction is not solely about desire for the person, but about the reassurance that one is worthy of attention, care, and emotional investment. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a testing ground, a figure whose engagement is interpreted as affirmation of self-worth. Each small sign of recognition temporarily alleviates self-doubt, creating a powerful, almost addictive cycle of pursuit and reward. Conversely, his withdrawal or distance can trigger heightened emotional responses, reinforcing the pattern and deepening investment despite inconsistency. Cultural and social narratives often reinforce this connection between validation and emotional unavailability. Stories of winning over the distant partner or earning someone's love glorify persistence in the face of emotional challenge, framing approval as a prize rather than a shared, natural experience. These narratives validate the idea that effort and perseverance are necessary for love, subtly conditioning women to interpret emotional distance as a meaningful challenge rather than a barrier. In this way, the attraction to emotionally unavailable men is not only psychological but socially reinforced, creating a potent interplay between personal history and cultural expectation. The focus on validation also explains why emotionally unavailable men can seem so compelling despite their inconsistencies. The dynamic transforms ordinary affection into a scarce resource, making the pursuit feel significant and urgent. The emotional energy invested in seeking acknowledgement mirrors deep-seated needs for self-worth, creating a sense of purpose and engagement. The emotionally unavailable man becomes both a mirror and a measure, reflecting internalized beliefs about value while offering the occasional, intensified moments of recognition that feel profoundly rewarding. Ultimately, the connection between self-worth, validation, and attraction to emotionally unavailable men is both powerful and subtle. Emotional distance amplifies perceived value, intermittent attention fuels longing, and the pursuit of approval mirrors internalized patterns from past experience. This dynamic is less about the man himself and more about the internalized desire for acknowledgement, affirmation, and significance. By understanding the role of self-worth and validation, it becomes possible to recognize the psychological forces at play, illuminating why emotionally unavailable men hold such compelling sway and why the pursuit often feels simultaneously irresistible, meaningful, and challenging. Fear of true intimacy is a subtle, often unconscious force that underpins why some women are drawn to emotionally unavailable men. It is not a reflection of a lack of desire for connection, but rather a protective mechanism shaped by early experiences, personal vulnerabilities, and internalized beliefs about love and closeness. True intimacy requires complete emotional exposure, the willingness to be seen fully, flaws and all, and the courage to entrust one's inner world to another person. For many, this level of vulnerability is both exhilarating and terrifying because it carries the potential for deep connection as well as profound hurt. The emotionally unavailable man, by his very nature, offers a way to engage without fully confronting the demands of intimacy. He presents closeness in measured doses, inviting connection, but never fully allowing it, creating a space in which a woman can flirt with vulnerability without wholly surrendering herself. This dynamic often begins with early life experiences that shape one's comfort with emotional exposure. Women who grew up in environments where affection, attention, or emotional responsiveness was inconsistent may have internalized the idea that closeness is risky, conditional, or unsafe. These patterns teach that opening up completely can lead to disappointment, rejection, or pain. Consequently, the emotionally unavailable man, whose emotional distance is familiar and predictable, becomes appealing because he offers a controlled engagement with intimacy. His unavailability mirrors earlier experiences, creating a sense of familiarity that is psychologically comforting even when it perpetuates frustration. The relationship allows for the possibility of connection while preserving a protective buffer against total vulnerability, making it feel safe to explore closeness in a limited, manageable way. Fear of intimacy is also tied to self-concept and identity. To be truly intimate requires confronting one's insecurities, desires, and the parts of oneself that are most vulnerable. Emotional exposure can trigger self-doubt, shame, or anxiety, particularly if past experiences have reinforced the idea that one's needs or feelings are secondary. The emotionally unavailable man, by withholding full engagement, reduces the immediate pressure to confront these vulnerabilities directly. The push and pull dynamic allows a woman to experience proximity and connection while maintaining a psychological safeguard. She can invest emotionally, experience moments of closeness, and yet avoid the full exposure that true intimacy demands. The relationship functions as a controlled experiment in vulnerability, offering engagement without the complete risk of surrender. This fear often intersects with the unconscious desire for mastery or control. Emotional unavailability can be interpreted as a puzzle to solve, a challenge to overcome, or a barrier to break through. Pursuing someone who resists intimacy provides a sense of agency and focus, allowing emotional energy to be directed outward rather than inward. By striving to reach the emotionally distant partner, a woman can engage in the act of connection without fully confronting her own fears of vulnerability. The emotionally unavailable man becomes a canvas for navigating intimacy indirectly, offering opportunities for engagement while buffering the personal risk associated with true emotional exposure. Fear of intimacy also manifests in patterns of avoidance and testing. Women may unconsciously create distance, challenge commitment, or scrutinize potential partners to gauge whether engagement will be safe or threatening. The emotionally unavailable man, by his nature, satisfies these patterns by maintaining distance and unpredictability. The relationship becomes a space where fear of closeness is simultaneously enacted and assuaged. The woman can engage emotionally in controlled doses, but she is never fully exposed to the vulnerability that comes with consistent intimacy. This dynamic creates a paradox in which attraction is intertwined with caution, desire with restraint, and connection with the comfort of safety. Another dimension of this fear is the psychological allure of unattainability. The emotionally unavailable man, by withholding full emotional presence, offers the illusion of intimacy without demanding complete openness. This partial engagement can be addictive because it allows emotional needs to be touched without fully confronting their depth or complexity. The fear of true intimacy is thus reinforced. The relationship offers connection but keeps full emotional exposure at bay, allowing desire to flourish while protecting the self from potential pain. The intermittent closeness, combined with distance, creates a cycle in which the heart is engaged, yet the most vulnerable aspects remain shielded. Cultural narratives also play a subtle role in amplifying this dynamic. Stories of the elusive lover, the thrill of the chase, and the romanticization of emotional distance reinforce the idea that true intimacy is something to approach cautiously and earn gradually. These narratives validate the psychological strategy of engaging without fully surrendering, framing the pursuit of an emotionally unavailable man as both exciting and meaningful. The fear of intimacy is therefore supported not only by personal history and psychology, but also by cultural messaging that glorifies measured vulnerability and the pursuit of elusive connection. Ultimately, fear of true intimacy explains why emotionally unavailable men can be so magnetic. They offer a space in which desire and closeness coexist with psychological safety, allowing engagement without full exposure. The dynamic allows women to explore vulnerability in controlled, partial ways while postponing the risks inherent in complete emotional surrender. Emotional unavailability satisfies the simultaneous longing for connection and the need for protection, creating a compelling paradox. Attraction is fueled by the promise of intimacy, while the fear of vulnerability ensures that the connection remains tantalizingly out of reach. The interplay between longing and caution, desire and self-preservation, makes the emotionally unavailable man irresistibly compelling, reflecting deeper patterns of fear, protection, and unconscious psychological strategy. When we look closely at the dynamics that draw women to emotionally unavailable men, we see a complex interplay of psychology, history, and desire. Mystery captivates the mind, offering intrigue and challenge that fuels fascination. Patterns of familiarity create an unconscious pull toward what is known, even if it is incomplete or painful. Projection allows hope, longing, and idealization to fill the gaps left by emotional distance, turning absence into imagined depth. The challenge itself becomes a game, where pursuit is rewarding and emotional highs are intensified by intermittent reinforcement. Self-worth and the search for validation make each moment of attention feel like confirmation of significance, amplifying the allure of inconsistency. And underlying it all, fear of true intimacy allows engagement without full exposure, creating a paradox where desire thrives alongside protection. Understanding these forces illuminates the subtle, powerful reasons behind attraction, offering clarity, self-awareness, and the possibility to choose connections that are truly fulfilling.